now that I have an herb garden again. Actually, it's a collection, a small collection of potted herbs right outside on my back porch. And they gave me an idea on a way to prep some food for these cooking for one videos. I want to do pork chops today. But rather than doing plain, barren pork chops like my mom used to do, I want to do something a little bit fancy that you would feel proud to serve to guests who come to dinner, but easy, really easy, like I do with my other cooking for one meals, where you could just store these things in the freezer, and by doing them the right way, when it comes time to cooking, you don't even have to thaw them. Just plop the frozen chop in a skillet, cook it 5 to 6 minutes per side. It's ready to eat. While that's cooking, you can cook your vegetables. You could put a meal on the table in under 10 minutes, or maybe under 15 minutes. So let's do cooking for one pork chops. So what I have here is a small boneless pork loin. This is about 3 1/4 pounds, 1.5 kilos roughly, kilograms. I'm going to remove the casing from this and then give it a quick rinse in the sink, and then I'll start prepping this. So there's my pork loin, rinsed and patted dry. And then I'm going to leave the fat on there. You can trim that fat off if you want. I'm on a keto diet, and the more fat, the better. Doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, but it does work. Another thing is, I'm not going to cut this really thick. If you cut thick chops like that, right, and you freeze it, you're not going to be able to cook it all the way through before the outside overcooks. If you want to cook thick chops, that's fine. Freeze them, but thaw them before you cook them. I'm going to cook thin chops, so I can toss a thin chop frozen into a skillet and cook it. And at 5 to 6 minutes per side, it'll cook all the way through. So that's what I want. Also, in a keto diet, you don't want to have too much protein, because the body can convert that protein into carbohydrates, which is something you're trying to avoid. Okay, I'm going to do just 3 right now just to show you what I'm doing. Get that separated. Okay. Set that aside a little bit. And then what I have here is some prosciutto. Take a piece of plastic off. I've got some thinly sliced prosciutto. So let me make some room for myself. Take a slice of prosciutto. If it tears a little bit, that's okay. Try to get it in one piece if you can. Okay, that should be good enough. And then what I have here is some fresh rosemary. So I'm going to pluck a twig off of that. And I'm just going to sprinkle some rosemary leaves or needles onto my prosciutto. The stem is so green, the stem should be okay. Rosemary has woody stems, so you don't want to put the woody part down, but if it's green, it's okay. Okay. So I'm going to distribute those around and then place the pork on top. I'm going to do that at an angle and then wrap it up like so. So there's my piece of pork. A little on the fancy side because it has herb in there, fresh herb, and the prosciutto will add flavor, especially when you go to cook it, because the prosciutto will sear nicely and add a nice flavor to that pork. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is show you a couple more ideas, and then I'm going to prep these for freezing, and then I'll go and show you even more. So let me go get some more herbs out of my garden. Going to get another piece of prosciutto here. if this comes up to room temperature, the prosciutto, it's a little bit easier to separate. And then what I have here, this is marjoram, which is related to oregano. It's very similar to oregano. In fact, when I was looking up marjoram, I couldn't find it in my spices and herbs book. And it was because it was a subheading under oregano. It's a species, I guess, of oregano. Oh, it smells so good, too. It smells like oregano. It's not going to be quite as strong as oregano, but it's still a nice, bold flavor. Okay, a little bit more. It's like more is always better, right? Okay. And then put my piece of pork down. Wrap it up. And these rough edges, you don't have to worry about them because when I freeze them, these will all get frozen in place. And when I cook them, they'll be frozen in place, so they'll get cooked in place. So there it is with marjoram. And then what I've got here is, this is oregano. So another piece of prosciutto. Okay, put a few leaves of oregano on there. You don't need much of this because this is well, the leaves are large. And this is a bold herb. Okay, 5 leaves should be enough. I'm going to try to arrange those in a nice little pattern there. And then put my pork on there. Wrap it up. Tuck those ends in. And you can see the leaves poking through, or at least they show through a little bit because of the prosciutto being kind of translucent. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap these up. I'm going to use my vacuum sealer and wrap these up to go into the freezer. This is my vacuum sealer. I use it so seldom. I always have to familiarize myself with how it works. Turn it on. It's on. Move this lever to the dry setting. The sealing light is blinking red. Okay, that's off. So then, there's a cutter that I can use to cut it, but nah. What's wrong with a pair of scissors? Okay, so there's my pouch, my bag. And then I want to put a piece of pork in the bag. And then push this in. The top part here. Make sure that it's in all the way. And then push here and here. There it is. Makes some noise. The red light's blinking again. It's sealing. It should pop when it's done. There it is. Pop. Done. There it is. See, now that can go into the freezer, and I can freeze that all the way through. You can tell what it is by the leaves. That's obviously the oregano. That's the oregano. So here are my 3 already, and I marked these. Oregano, rosemary, marjoram. These are ready to go into the freezer. But I'm going to start again slicing off some thin pieces of chop. I'm going to take 3 more off because I have 3 more herbs ready. There it is. Nice clean slice of prosciutto. Okay, what have I got here? I've got 2 small sage leaves. I have some garden sage outside. I'm going to cut these in half lengthwise because A little bit of sage goes a long way. Set those down. Fresh sage. That'll be good. Sage and onion. I love sage and onion together. Put my prosciutto on top. My pork, rather. And then start wrapping this up. This is tarragon. And tarragon has kind of a licorice flavor to it a little bit. It's mild. It's not as strong as, say, fennel. There is fennel outside, not in my yard, but fennel grows wild all over this place. In fact, my neighbor didn't know what she had in her garden. She thought, oh, that's pretty, I'll let that grow. And if she doesn't do something about it, it's going to take over her yard. Fennel takes over. Okay, so tarragon. And you could put herbs on both sides if you want. I don't want to overdo it with the herbs. I don't want them to overpower the flavor of the pork, because pork isn't a bold flavored meat anyways. I might do both sides if I were doing slices of lamb, which I do want to do one of these days. And what have I got this time? I have some fresh thyme. No play on words intended. Thyme this time. Oh, that smells so good. Thyme is especially good on beef. But why not on pork? Put a few leaves down. Okay. And then again, put a piece of pork over the top. Wrap it up. All right, I'm going to show you another way to wrap these. What I have here is a piece of plastic wrap, sometimes known as cling film. You can wrap these up like so. There's one problem with this, however. And when I use plastic wrap, what I like to do is the final edge, I like to twist it up like that so that there's a little pull string there to show me where to start unwrapping it. But this is not airtight. And if you put this in the freezer just like this, you're going to get freezer burn, which means that the surface is drying out or it's oxidizing because air is getting into it. So use a piece of Ziploc freezer bag. These are freezer bags because they help to keep the air out. I'm not going to mark these, but I'll mark on there what it is. Okay? So let me do these other two pieces. Just in time for a train to go by. So there's my three pieces in there in a little Ziploc bag. It's a quart-sized bag. I'm going to seal most of the way across, and then I'm going to push the air out and then finish by sealing it. It's not vacuum sealed, but most of the air is out, and I can write on there sage, tarragon, and thyme. Got another couple of slices ready. And what I have here is a little bit of minced garlic. I don't want to put a lot on there, but garlic and pork go very nicely together. And an herb that goes well with garlic is parsley. This is Italian parsley or flat leaf parsley. And I can just put these leaves on there whole, or if you want to, you can chop them up. Put those on upside down so that the nice part is to the outside. Okay. Then cover them. Set that down. And the last herb that I've got 8 pots of herbs outside, is who doesn't love basil? I have some fresh basil leaves here. Oh, just pinching those leaves off is just releasing that wonderful aroma. Let's see, a small leaf. And then another piece of pork. So that's pork and basil. Then I'm going to show you yet another way, actually my preferred way to wrap these up. What I have here is an Impulse heat sealer. They're available on Amazon. This is an 8-inch. I bought an 8-inch because I'm using poly tubing. This is 6-inch wide. And I'm going to cut one of these off. Where's my good scissors? Right here. And you can seal one edge. You place it on the heating element, press down, wait for it to click. It seals, and what you've got is a little plastic bag here, like so. And then put it in there, the pork. And you're not going to be able to get as much air out as you would with a vacuum sealer, but I can get enough out that for how long I'm going to store these, which isn't going to be very long, probably at most a week or two. Heat seal the other end, and there it is, a little packet. And these hold very nicely in the freezer because they do keep the air out, so I don't have to worry about freezer burn. 2 more. Now I have this other piece to go, so I'm gonna, and I have a pile of fresh herbs sitting over here to the side. You can't see that. I'm gonna do this whole piece, slice it up, get it prepped, and get it into the freezer. So there's my 3rd tray ready to go into the freezer. I got a total of 20 chops out of that piece of pork loin. I'm going to let these freeze overnight, and then tomorrow I'm going to cook one to show you how easily they cook. So here we are now, the next day, and I could have cooked up one of these chops yesterday, but I wanted to make sure they were frozen solid so that I could demonstrate how easily they cook, even though they're frozen. And you might have noticed, those of you who watch a lot of my videos, you might have noticed a lot of similarity to something I videoed recently that I called pork chops, saltimbocca, that I sous vide cooked in 90 minutes. These are made in a very similar way, but the difference is I cut these chops thin so that I could cook them quickly, 5 minutes per side, maybe less, in a small skillet. So let's cook up a frozen pork chop. Got a little skillet heating on the stove. That's frozen solid. I'm going to toss that in there. I put up maybe a little bit of oil, a few drops of cooking olive oil in there. You can already hear that starting to sizzle a little bit. Going to put a cover on that. I'm going to turn the heat down to medium low and then set a timer for 5 minutes. I'm cooking this actually on a rear burner, which is a simmer burner, because it just doesn't need to cook at a high temperature, just enough to start to brown it a little bit. There's my timer. This chop has been in there for 5 minutes. I'm going to flip it over if I can get a hold of it. See, lightly brown. And again, I'm at medium low, and I'm going to set the timer for 4 minutes, and then I'll start checking the temperature. I want to get this up to about, a medium rare, which is about 130 degrees. I actually stopped this before it got to 4 minutes because using my digital thermometer, I checked the temperature inside. And it's already up to 158, 59, 160. That's well cooked. So I don't have to worry about that. And again, that was frozen. That went into the pan frozen. 5 minutes on one side and about 2 minutes on the other. I'm going to flip this over because see the leaves in there? That looks like parsley, and therefore there's garlic in there. And then what I did while the pork was cooking, I cooked up some snow peas because I think they go well with the flavor of pork. One more. Come on. There you go. Okay. Clean up that plate a little bit before I do some photography. And then I can taste this and see how good it tastes. So there it is. A frozen solid pork chop. Cooked in minutes. What could be easier than that? I think the vegetables took longer to cook than the pork chop. Tender and juicy. And you'll notice I didn't season the pork chops before I wrapped them in prosciutto. And that's because the prosciutto has a salty flavor to it. So it actually does my seasoning for me. One of my snow peas. I love snow peas. Crisp, tender. Okay. Because I no longer have barking dogs next door, I'm going to go eat al fresco. I'm going to sit on my porch and eat my late lunch.